Hey guys, sorry we missed you. Let's go over everything so you don't miss a thing. A couple heads ups. First of all, due next class, your real world connections graphic organizer. We're going to work on that today in class, but that's due for next class. In addition, please make sure you have your books completed by either Thursday the 27th, that's A Day, or Friday the 28th, that's B Day. We're almost there. Keep working. In addition to that, our very last major summative will be your speculative fiction major summative, which we'll talk about today. And that is due Friday before 11:59 p.m. Last but not least, don't forget, we do have a deadline. If you have any late work from the fourth quarter you want to go and turn in for a grade, please make sure you submit that before Friday, June 4th to make sure that you get credit. So those are our heads ups. Go and kind of remind ourselves of where we came from last class, where we're going today. So if we go ahead and take a look, right? So last class we went ahead and we gave you guys a lot of time to go and work on your writing reflection major summative. Then we went ahead and we worked on our symbolism graphic organizer after a little bit of review of symbolism, and then we had time to read. Today, I want to make sure we get a chance to do a quick mini lesson about real world connections. Make sure that we go ahead and give you time to work on your real world connections graphic organizer. And, of course, go ahead and introduce your speculative fiction major summative. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead, right? So, we're going in. Let's go ahead and start by talking about the connections between our world and your book's world. So I'm going to start by going and dropping a link. The link is actually going to be right down here in the description of the video. You guys know where. But I'm going to drop in the link to an article that we read today in class that talked about how actually the Hunger Games salute, you know, the one that looks like that, Mockingjay salute, that was actually banned in Thailand. I want you to read that. And as you're reading, I want you to be thinking, huh, what connections do you notice between our world from the article and the dystopian world from the Hunger Games? Or even what connections can you find between our world and your book's world? So go ahead, click on that link down here in the description of the video. Go ahead and read through that and be thinking. Again, remember, what are some connections between our world and the dystopian world that you're reading? We'll go ahead and pause, give you guys a little bit of time to read that. Go ahead and read now. It's crazy, right? Actually, that article was written in 2014. You know, it's still illegal in Thailand. Go ahead and use that three-finger salute for pro-democracy. That's crazy, right? But actually, that's not the only connection between dystopian or speculative literature and our world, right? You know, in 1984, a very famous speculative fiction book, we read in high school, the whole idea was the whole concept of the government could be watching or listening or reading your every move, thought, or idea. And that was kind of predicted by George Orwell in 1948 when he wrote this book. And it's kind of ties in, you know, with what we've seen when it comes to Alexas or Google Homes, of the way in which people are listening even when they say they're not. So it's kind of like this tie-in, right? Even Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, his science fiction classic, that where, you know, what was banned were books. They're banned, they're burned. So the same way that Hitler burned books that weren't Mein Kampf during the Holocaust, right? You know, actually this crackdown on illegal books is similar to the crackdown on illegal cell phones in North Korea to go ahead and share information on where Kim Jong-un's, where his crew was on a ship near the Chinese border in 2019. So a huge crackdown, very similar to what we saw with Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. Even similar too was the Fire Music Festival in 2019, where a very expensive, very highly sought after music festival was taking place. It was organized on one of the islands from the Bahamas, and well, whoops! Once all these young people got there and were very well connected, with a lot of food, water, shelter, or even a way to get back. So kind of had a real life Hunger Games on your hands. So these are just some of the ways in which, you know, your speculative fiction books might be kind of mirroring our reality. So if you're starting to find out that kind of seems like a weird coincidence, it's not. Authors are doing that on purpose, right? So if even we go and take a look, we think about Harrison Bergeron in our world. I want you to actually go ahead and pause. Actually, pause for a minute. And I want you to think, what does Harrison Bergeron, that world, what are some similarities? What does it have in common with our world? And just before I start thinking, just hints. Think about power. Think about government. Think about the way in which the people respond to power, and think about protests and rebellions and how those are handled. So kind of actually take a minute to pause and be thinking about this question, what does Harrison Bergeron have in common with our world? Go ahead and pause for a minute and think. There's a lot of connections there between Harrison Bergeron and our world, and it's not a coincidence. Kurt Vonnegut was writing that very well and very keenly aware of the way in which he wanted to go ahead and kind of comment on it. And that kind of brings us to our so what, because you notice there's the whole like, so what? So why does it matter? Well, authors of speculative fiction, dystopian fiction, they will include real world connections, kind of send you a message or to kind of make a comment or add some kind of speculation about our world and the way in which they see things happening. Or sometimes they're trying to motivate you, the reader, to go ahead and do something to make sure that our world doesn't turn into one of their speculative fiction worlds. So that's something actually to be on the lookout for. So I actually want you to go ahead and kind of make a list. I kind of want you to kind of go back and kind of make a list of some of the similarities between your book's world and our world. So, think about current events or even thinking about historical events like, whether it's mass genocide, whether it's the atom bomb, whether it's, or even thinking about current events, whether it comes to elections or protests. Be thinking about settings, be thinking about some of our characters in your books that might be strikingly similar to some of the world leaders in our world today or in the past. You think about some of the rules, customs, or even some of those social issues like racism or sexism or division between groups. Those are enormous in speculative fiction. They're very similar in our world. And be thinking about, how there are similarities between your book and our world, between authority and the way in which the authority responds to challenges for power. So go ahead and kind of come up with a list of all of these and kind of ask yourself, so what? Why does it matter? Why did the author put this in here? What are they trying to tell me? So actually, go ahead and we're gonna do this right now. I'm gonna go with you guys a little bit. Go ahead and pause. See if you can come up with a list of a couple different things that are in common between your world or between your book's world and our world. Be thinking about why did the author do it? Let's kind of come up with that list differently. Let's pause. Got some connections? Good. So let's go ahead and let's go into our very final graphic organizer. So if we go back into Schoology, go into your pink speculative fiction folder, and then of course once you go ahead and get to that speculative fiction graphic organizer, you guys know by now we're going to have to click the edit button. It's next to the submit button. Click the edit button so the Google Doc pops out into its own slide, into its own tab, so you can go and click the update button. So we're going to do that. Go and click the update button, and you should have something that looks like this. I'll show you my example here. Found a couple real world connections between my book, The Grace Year, and our world. I thought about how women as property are used as property through marriage, and also gaslighting less powerful groups to go ahead and maintain power. So these are some connections, and I kind of wrote about what the author might be trying to say about our world, or how these rules or customs are different in my book's world from our world. And then I want to give a brief explanation using details in the book supporting why I made this real world connection, and just including a page number. Finding graphic, and I did. So why don't we go ahead and pause for you to do the exact same thing. Go into your graphic organizer. Remember, if you can't get that update button to work, make sure you click edit in that blue Schoology bar so it pops out into its own tab. Then you can go to slide 5, click update, and then you'll be able to go ahead and work on this. So let's go ahead and give you guys a chance to go ahead and wrap this up. Let's go and do our last graphic organizer. Here we go. Excellent. So let's move on to our very final major summative of the entire year. We'll introduce it today, right? So if you go ahead and you go into our very last thing in that same pink folder for speculative fiction, it's the major summative. You should get something that ends up looking like this. And if this looks familiar to, say, I don't know, maybe this graphic organizer that you already went ahead and completed, well, weird how that might have worked, because what you got to do is basically fill out these 4 graphic organizers, which look very similar. And actually, if you notice, all I ended up doing was adding a fun background. And I'll go ahead and, of course, go ahead and drop some links down here in the description of the video if you want some fun backgrounds to use. And then I went ahead and I did something crazy. So for the power one, you know what I did is I actually went to my power slide, picked my best work, and added it here. Then for my archetype slide, I went to my archetype slide and picked my best work and added it here. I did the exact same thing when it came to symbolism. I chose to work with the red flower. And I did the exact same thing when it came to my real world connections. I went ahead and chose the gaslighting, and that was it. So That's what it comes down to. The only thing that's different here, of course, you're going to have to actually make sure that you include quotations for every single one of those boxes. Because if you notice, right here on the first page, it does say each slide must include at least one quote with a page number and images, either drawn, photographed, and uploaded, or found online, of course, with a proper citation. So that's your last summative assignment for the year, which means if we go ahead and take a look, that kind of means it's time to go ahead and make sure your real-world connection graphic organizer gets finished up. Make sure you work on that speculative fiction major summative, but remember, I'm going to go ahead and give you an hour next class. But you can get started on if you want, but if you need more time, you're going to have an hour next class. And then make sure your speculative fiction book is finished. So if you have any questions, or if you need help, of course, always reach out to me, email me. I'm happy to go ahead and help. But otherwise, good luck. You got this.